Hello, good morning. I'm Chris, and this is my forest. It's rather beautiful, and so I'm going to talk to you here about my conversation with Rong Chen, rather than sitting behind my desk at home. My children are still fast asleep. It's relatively early in the morning, and I think sometimes it's better to be in nature to discuss philosophy than it is behind a computer screen. So I'll share this with you, and I hope it will comfort you in the same way that it has comforted me. So I emailed Rong the other day because I was concerned about the fear, uncertainty and doubt that has been spread about Elastos. And I'm an avid follower of Elastos, and I'm a real fan of the idea and the visionaries that sit behind it. I learned about Elastos in about 2017, the back end of 2017, probably through someone like Blockchain Brad or a Neo affiliate, but I took the decision in December to invest, and I was one of the initial investors from the West and part of a lockup that started in about January or February last year. So we're a year down the line, and the value of my portfolio has diminished considerably. There is no one that is more pissed off about the current value of Elastos than me. Well, actually that's probably not true. My wife is pretty annoyed, and there's a friend of mine in Australia called Sarge who needs a hug every so often. But we are all frustrated that our portfolios are down. I get it. And we're frustrated at some of the workings of the organization that we know of Elastos, because it hasn't followed some of the models that we have anticipated to exist. And so I emailed Rong and explained the FUD that I was picking up on the English-speaking channels, and I gave him a list of options and ideas that I would follow if I was his marketing director or director of PR. And I said, you know, we're after leadership at the moment. Well, I want you to come out and I want you to stand up and I want you to talk to the community about what it is that you believe in and what it is that Elastos is doing. And I think we need to answer some of the doubt that is out there. And about 12 or so hours went by, and I hadn't really expected to hear anything from him. And he messaged me and said, can we chat? And I thought, yeah, okay. So I connected with him online, and we got to a point where we were having a Skype conversation that I thought was going to take about 5 minutes, because I had to get ready to go to work in the UK, and he was getting ready to go to bed in the US. However, we talked for about 45-50 minutes. And had a really interesting and revealing conversation. And through the conversation, my belief about what I would ask him to do if I was his PR director changed, because I started to understand once again the philosophy that he is trying to imbue into Elastos and to us, the conceptual and physical investors in this space. He described Elastos as greater than the sum of the parts. He was basically describing to me the fact that Elastos is an ecosystem. It's an environment. He sees it as a utility, and one doesn't market water or electricity. You don't see different sales of electricity necessarily. There are different companies, sure, it's the products and the services around the actual utility that you market and you sell. But you don't market water that comes out of the tap. So his idea is that the internet itself, the smart web that he's building, is not worthy of a market campaign in the same way that you have now for a business in the traditional sense. And I agree with that. So when you come at it from a slightly different perspective, you can completely understand his point of view. He is not the CEO. He doesn't want to be the hero that sits at the center of the organization. We can all aspire to chase after these centralized characters. And there are some classics in history. You know, you can just think about the draw that some of our great leaders have had in times past. But all of their attributes are actually their flaws, and the systems that they have tried to perpetuate have not worked because of the flaws that they inherently have as individuals and as humans, and the centralized system that they are building. And in fact, you can see them in the internet markets of today, and some of the companies that are out there have people in them who some commentators absolutely loathe. So Justin Sun might be one, or Dr. Craig Wright, as he calls himself. And yet they have attracted huge followings. So, or CZ from Binance. So Binance and Tron, there are other organizations out there that operate on the edge of what I would describe as decency. And they have attracted huge followings, and indeed, because of that, huge market caps. But that doesn't mean that they're great organizations, or indeed that they are going to support the global ecosystem that we definitely need to address with new ideas and new philosophies and new business models. What we've got is the Justin Suns of the world rushing around, gathering people in to what is effectively a centralized system that all revolves around the ego of an individual. And that is absolutely what Rong Chen is not about. There is no ego there. So what he's saying is, look, I don't want to be the superhero at the center of this. And I don't want to have a centralized organization that sits around me. Because what I'm building is a new, smarter web. What I'm building is an environment and an ecosystem where the participants, the community, are the driving force for what happens. And instead of being centralized or even decentralized in the traditional 1962 model, we move even further to the right and end up with a distributed peer-to-peer system where every node has an equal worth. And so the ideas have to come from us. His view is that he's not building a company structure in the way that we are used to. And more importantly, the way that we gravitate towards. So we have all grown up, we are all part of our context. I mean, we're part of what has created us, and we think in that way. So everyone that has been involved or grown up in an organization or a country that is hierarchical, that revolves around a central figurehead, is going to think like that about everyday life and about the structures that they want to see around them. The fact is, what we've realized in society now is that our current economic models don't work, or they're not working as well as we thought we had predicted that they would. They don't work for us as individuals, they don't work for us as countries. We can see democracies around the world and other government and political systems really struggling under the current pressures because none of them are working effectively. There are stresses all over the place. And I think we can see a worrying trend where people are starting to look back in towards the centre of their organisations or their nation states. And that's not necessarily helpful, because the planet doesn't need that at the moment, and our economies don't need that, and particularly the individuals in our economies don't need that at the moment. What we need is a fairer system of government and a fairer system of wealth distribution that allows people to genuinely earn the money from, in the 21st century sense, the data that they are producing. Because people themselves have become a commercial asset whose data is stolen, or we give it away because you would have to otherwise sign thousands of privacy statements, and simply we can't be bothered. And so Rong's idea, which is right, is that we need to develop a system that offers this fairer world to us all. And he's going to do that. He's going to do that through Elastos, and he's had this vision for years. He couldn't make it work without blockchain. And now he's discovered blockchain, and the teams around him that are working for this project understand what he's trying to do. He can absolutely see the route to a better future, where we have a safer internet, an internet that allows digital identity and therefore builds scarcity, and allows us to own our data. And he's on top of it. He is getting to the point where the entities that make up Elastos currently are working together to build the whole. So that there's real synergy in Elastos. The sum of the parts are in, or the sum of the whole, sorry, is much greater than the sum of the parts, and certainly will be. But at the moment, they're still building all the parts. So what you can see in Elastos, I think, at the moment is like a garage with car parts in it. We're building all the parts. We know what it looks like. We can see a plan. And those parts are coming together rather nicely in different parts of the world. But we've pretty much got the basics at the moment. We've got the chassis, we've got the engine, we've got the wheels, we've got the driving system, suspension. It's all being built, and it's all being built by different teams, and it is coming together because they understand how it will fit together. But there's plenty of scope to develop this project. And this is where his idea extends further, because Elastos isn't a company in the traditional sense. Elastos is the ecosystem. Elastos is the framework onto which you hang your other companies, your entrepreneurial companies. So, you know, his view is that this space is ripe now for others to come and join. So he's delighted that Brian, for example, is taking on DMA, but that we've got the Carrier, that we've got Trinity, that we've got Hive, that we've got Hyper. You know, there's loads of really good projects out there. All of those are building the parts of the car. And it's going to take a bit of time. He thinks it'll take this year through 2020 and probably until 2021 until the ecosystem is matured properly, or enough to continue and really truly accelerate adoption. And again, this comes from his background and his philosophy. That's my dog. Which is a combination of East meets West. Brought up in China as a relatively poor individual, looking for opportunity, goes to America, is trained and educated and welcomed by a very warm country, emotionally, that has embraced him and the family that looked after him and cared for him, goes back to China, comes back to the US, is able to see philosophy through both lenses, and the immediacy of the Western demand is foreign to the much longer term perspective of the East, where strategic patience is absolutely crucial to guarantee future success. And actually, if we look at geopolitics now, you can probably see some of that playing out. And I don't think it's a bad philosophy to think that actually you need a longer term view than 5 minutes. You've got to think hard about building a foundation, and a foundation that's really going to work for all of the people to achieve the aims that you want it to over time. Why rush for 2 years when you think you could create something that might last 20 or 200? And I think that's the space we're in. We are desperately chasing after a centralized figurehead for a organizational structure that we feel is familiar for an immediate success. And Rong Chen has gone, okay, if you want that, you can go somewhere else. But that's not what I'm about. What I'm about is an open and smart web that distributes wealth fairly, and that it is run by a participatory community where everyone gets the chance to contribute, and the decision for that contribution is based on the consensus of the community itself. So there is opportunity for all. It's a proper meritocracy, and it is being built. He's building the structures that will allow us to do that. And that's a pretty bold vision. But it's absolutely what the world needs right now. We've got to have it. Because the banks ain't going to last in the way that they have done. Our oligopolies and centralized organizations are not going to last. Because we are feeling the tensions all over the place at the moment. We have rushed to the castles that have been built for us by Google and Facebook, for example. And in doing so, feel safe inside their walls. We feel safe inside the walls of our country, some yet to be built. But the truth is, we are of one planet with limited resources, and we are all seeking a fairness and equity. Well, we should all be seeking a fairness and equity that yet doesn't exist. But you can see why the tension exists in the FUD of Telegram, where we see around us price rises of thousands of % last year and drops of pretty significant proportion this year, and other companies persuading followers who are mostly of the same variety at the moment, because we are a pretty closed club. The crypto files that are out there, and we can see us rushing around trying to make a quick buck. And yet I think this project has much more similarity with Satoshi's original vision for Bitcoin and the cypherpunk's vision for the fairer society, the distribution of wealth, and a fairer understanding of money in its generation and use than anything else that's out there at the moment. Some of the other projects that seem to be doing pretty well and selling the same ideas are run on a centralized basis. And as I say, that's not what Rong's about. So if you want to chase after that, great, crack on. Go and do it. And in fact, leave your tokens for me to buy on your way out. But if you're not, if you are interested in this philosophical benefit that through the construction of all the different elements of Elastos will come together over the course of this year, and pretty soon actually, merge mining will start taking place in April, I believe. And you'll see all the parts of that car being brought together in 2020 and maturing in 2021. But here's the opportunity. Through Cyber Republic, a name that Rong has thought of in his own mind for years, in his development of this, the Earth's last operating system, we see the opportunity for anybody to build a team or as an individual come with an idea and put it to the organization, to the community, as their contribution to building the smart web of the future, as an entrepreneurial company. So, like DMA, or any of the others that I've mentioned, it's now our chance. We can gather together in groups, and we can determine what we want to build. If we see an idea for an infrastructure app, or a true business app that wants to use that new digital ID and therefore the scarcity of digital assets, then we can come along and build it. And not only that, we can get funded for it. And that is quite an interesting perspective.